everybody. I'm Lisa Brennan.
And I'm Justin Trice.
Welcome to Crime of the Arts, a true crime podcast that peeks behind the curtain to shine a light on the dark and untold truths of the creative arts.
From film set mysteries to celebrity murders and art heists, these two theater nerds will usher you into the unknown.
This week, I'm going to tell you the story about Christina Grimmie.
And I'm going to tell you about Danny Trejo, one of Hollywood's most badass action actors.
He seriously is. He's such a badass.
He's the best. I'm going to give you a little background on him, and it's a pretty cool story. Some of you probably already know, but the rest, you're going to be in for a treat.
I got nothing, so I'm in for the treat today. Most people know the Christina Grimmie story. She is the contestant who was on The Voice, and she was murdered very young.
Yeah.
So there's parts of this story that I didn't know that I found in my research, mostly about the young man who committed this murder. So I'll give you some backstory on her, and then we'll get into it. So Christina Victoria Grimmie was born to Tina and Albert Grimmie in New Jersey.
Oh, Jersey.
Jersey.
That was more like Boston. I don't know why I did that, but yeah. Jersey.
In New Jersey. She was born March 12th, 1994, a baby. Her mother worked as a receptionist until she was diagnosed with breast cancer, and her father worked at Verizon Communications as of 2014. She had one older brother, and his name was Marcus, and he worked as her road manager when they were out touring, which I thought was pretty cool, keeping the family.
Exactly.
Her father noticed Grimmie's talent for singing when she was just 6 years old, and she started playing the piano by the age of 10. And despite having received piano lessons, she played by ear, which is a true testament to the talent.
I was going to say that shows like true musical genius. There are only very few people who can play by ear.
Yeah, it's interesting to think that she was 6 years old, that her parents could see that in her, because already my 2-year-old, I'm seeing things in him that are very interesting. Like, he's very much into like fixing things. Like, he'll take tools and like pretend like he's fixing stuff. And I'm like, that's just the way that his brain must work. Very young, you start showing what your talents might be. And her mother said that when she was a baby, instead of like walking around being like, bah, 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 she walked around singing la, 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 la all the time.
Oh,
yeah, so cute. 2009, Christina Grimmie began posting YouTube videos. And she was just 15 years old, and she used the username ZeldaXLove64. As you can probably assume, she was a big gamer.
I was just about to ask.
Zelda Love 64 comes from, the video game. And her favorite games were The Legend of Zelda, hence the handle, Mario Kart, Smash Brothers, League of Legends, and Elder Scrolls. My brother literally only plays Smash Brothers. Every time I'm looking at him, he's on a Switch. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, Smash. I'm like, okay. Hey, what are you doing? Smash. Like, cool.
Smash Brothers.
And he's played Smash Brothers for like 20 years. Like, he's been obsessed with it. Shout out to my brother. I'm at his house and I'm recording in his dorkdom man cave, and it's the dopest place. Maybe he'll let me put some pictures up on the Instagram. It's so cool. She would later consistently stream on Twitch for like 2 years back in 2014, 2016. So she kind of gained this little following there. And then she had her little following on YouTube.
See, I didn't know that. I thought like her following just naturally came from maybe, what every talented kid did, musical videos of YouTube. I didn't know she was such a hardcore gamer. She created a following via streaming and then was like, hey, while you're watching me game, come check out my music page. It's pretty cool.
How many different ways can you attract people? She just had that fire, that magnetism. She actually wasn't really into posting and streaming at first. Her friends had to like convince her and really push her to do it. The way that they convinced her was like, you need people to connect with the way that you make music. Like, she was mostly famous for her covers of very popular songs. And her decision to put her life online really changed everything. It's so crazy. It's like such a new world now from when we were kids, right? YouTube came out when we were much older. But
exactly,
people have complete careers based off of social media, influencing, which I can't even believe is a job title. And it's just you being you. And that's it.
It fucking blows my mind because back when we're kids, our generation, it's like our parents are like, you can't make money just off of doing this.
Right.
Or you can't play with toys all day. Meanwhile, there's fucking like 10-year-olds on YouTube making millions of dollars a year just because they're posting videos of them playing with the latest toy that comes out.
Yep. Her covers first gained attention and stood out because her voice and her personality was incredible, and her interpretations of these well-known songs were just blowing people away. She first earned her recognition for covering Miley Cyrus's Party in the USA.
Okay.
And it's actually it's really good. So she was homeschooled for her junior year of high school in 2010. And that same year, she covered Nelly's Just a Dream, had the cover for Nelly with 2 other YouTubers, and it received more than 190 million views over the course of 10 years.
Wow.
190 million. That's
insane.
That's an insane amount of people watching that video. People loved it. In 2011, she placed number 2 in the My YouTube competition behind Selena Gomez. Number 2 to the number 1. As her popularity grew on YouTube, she was discovered by Selena Gomez's mother and father, and they became her managers, which is something I had no idea about.
That's hysterical. Well, you just said she was number 2 to the number 1 at the time, which is Selena Gomez. They saw that opportunity. They were like, we got to nurture this.
Right. That was the age of just starting to discover people on YouTube by celebrities like Usher and Bieber. And it's super cool. It's just so cool. These random kids get picked up. And Selena Gomez sort of became one of her mentors. And in 2011, Christina Grimmie was asked to host a Disney video game show called Power Up.
Power Up. I remember. I've never actually watched that, but I remember that being a thing.
Yeah, I was way out of the Disney world in 2011. So she was asked to appear on the Digi Tour in 2011, which was a musical tour created specifically for YouTube artists. And she opened for Selena Gomez in the scene, All-Star Weekend, the Jonas Brothers. I mean, she started to really climb in the industry. And she released an EP entitled Find Me in June of 2011. And her album was released independently and debuted at number 35 on the Billboard charts in the US. So how cool is that? I mean, we have a few artists now that have come out in the last 20 years or so that are completely independent that land on those charts. You got Macklemore, Drake, and all it does is allow them to have more autonomy over their choices. It gives them room to be authentic to their own sound and creativity. And I just love it.
They don't have to bend to the standards of the music game.
Right. It's not like the back in the day when Britney or Christina and all them signed and it was like, I want you to be this sex symbol, this sound. It just gave them so much freedom. And those are some incredible artists. I don't know if I know people hate on Macklemore. I don't know if you've ever listened to Macklemore's albums, but they're fucking good.
I've never listened to all of his albums. I mean, I don't hate on Macklemore. For me, what it is, he just came out of nowhere that it was like he was winning every Grammy. And I felt like I still didn't know the definitive who is Macklemore? What is his true genre of sound?
Go listen to his albums because you'll find it.
I'll give it a listen. Give it a listen.
Try. The first album's very good. The second album, he talks about how he's got to conform and how he's out in the second album. It's really, he hasn't put anything out since then.
Damn. Okay.
So in 2012, Christina Grimmie and her family moved to LA to pursue her singing career. And she was signed to Creative Artists Agency. And in 2013, her channel had more than 375 million views and 200 million subscribers.
What the fuck?
I had no fucking clue that she was. I mean, she's famous all on her own. She doesn't need The Voice.
I was just about to say, we didn't even get up to The Voice yet. And the later seasons of The Voice and American Idol, I get, they look for more of these online sensations. But I guess I never truly processed how early in the game they were doing that. Because her season was what, 7 years ago? 8 years? Yeah.
6. I mean,
oh, see how much? Yeah. See, wow.
Around this time is when she auditioned for The Voice. And if you don't know what The Voice is, it's a singing competition show similar to American Idol, and it's on NBC. And during the blind auditions, she performed Miley Cyrus's Wrecking Ball. She comes out on fire, man. It's nuts. All 4 of the coaches turned their chairs. So the coaches that season were Adam Levine, Usher, Shakira, and Blake Shelton. And turn their chairs mean that they're interested in working with her just for logistical purposes of how the show works. And she ended up going to be on Adam Levine's team after he told her that she had the potential to be a huge star due to her voice and stage presence. Overall, that season, she finished in 3rd place behind winner Josh Kaufman and runner-up Jake Worthington.
Okay.
And Carson Daly was shocked that she didn't win. He could not believe that she was in, the winning position for that show. All of her performances were released on iTunes and Spotify as studio versions. which is so cool. I guess they don't do that with everything. I guess you really have to have something that people are interested in for them to do a recording session.
Exactly.
During the competition, Adam Levine expressed his desire to sign her to his record label, 222 Records. Lil Wayne also showed interest in signing her to Young Money Entertainment, and she ultimately chose to sign with Island Records. And I mean, those are some serious labels, and the idea of her being signed to Young Money makes me chuckle.
I'm just picturing that right now, too, because back then, I mean, Drake was still essentially signed there, too.
Nicki Minaj, like you can't get any more opposite dichotomy of Nicki Minaj and Christina Grimmie.
But again, you know, he would have had her as a particular type, but I think it would have worked well. It kind of would have been like the Skylar Grey vibe to what Eminem has. Like, I don't know. I would have liked to see that.
Yeah. I mean, for her Disney-like persona, doesn't feel like it fits with Young Money, so I get it. But after the show ended, she toured with previous contestants of The Voice. I guess they had a Voice summer tour in June of 2014.
Yeah, they always do a tour.
They do that with everything, all those shows now. Dancing with the Stars, American Idol, whatever. So while on the road, she was writing and recording music for her third major release. And she had hoped to release a second full-length album by the end of that year, so 2014. Fast forward 2 years. It is June 10th, 2016. And Christina Grimmie performed with a band called Before You Exit at the Live Plaza in Orlando, Florida. And it was her last concert before a break to go home to LA to see her dog and her family. Her dog's name was Chloe.
Oh.
Plus, she had snagged VIP tickets for the upcoming E3 Gaming Expo. So she was super amped about that. Earlier in the day, she had posted an announcement on her social media asking people to attend the concert. And that night, Christina Grimmie strutted across the stage, belting out song after song to hundreds of fans as a man lingered in the back of the Plaza Live Theater, watching and waiting. He dug his hands in his pockets of his black jeans as he leaned against the wall. He tugged nervously on his red, white, and blue plaid flannel shirt, and he adjusted his new black baseball cap. After the show, at 10 o'clock, Christina was out signing autographs inside the venue, and that man got in line behind dozens of other fans who wanted to meet the vivacious singer, and he shifted his weight back and forth. Soon, it was going to be his turn to meet her. And Christina initially opened her arms to greet him with a hug, and in return, 27-year-old Kevin James Lobo pulled out a black 9mm Glock and fired 5 shots, hitting her multiple times at point-blank range.
Whoa. Okay.
Witnesses fled the scene, and Lobo was tackled by Christina Grimmie's brother, Marcus, and they actually got into like a scuffle on the floor. The attacker broke free, backed up against the wall, pulled out a second handgun, and fired a single fatal shot into the left side of his head. And he died by suicide at the scene. Christina was on the floor and bleeding from a head wound, and they started to perform CPR on her, and 911 was called, and she was taken to the Orlando Regional Medical Center in critical condition. And she was pronounced dead before 11 p.m. that night, and she was just 22 years old.
Wow.
An autopsy performed the following day confirmed that she was actually shot 3 times, once in the head and twice in the chest. And Orlando Police Department said that Kevin Lobel had traveled by a taxi to Orlando from his home in St. Petersburg, Florida. That's almost 2 hours by taxi.
Several $100s, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Non-traceable. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah. With him, he brought 2 handguns, 2 extra magazines full of ammunition, and a large hunting knife. So there's a lot to unpack there. She was so young, and to have a fan, I mean, you see things like this in other scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
John Lennon is a perfect example. Just that fanatic impression, and even celebrity in general. We tend to feel like we know these people because they're in our faces so often, but really we don't have a fucking clue.
We don't fucking know them at all.
Strange.
Yeah.
It really is so weird, dude. I read an interview just the other day about the hell's his name? Harry Styles. And he's like, somebody said that, you know, you often date women publicly. And I guess he talks about being bi or whatever in the interview.
Right.
And he's like, I don't feel like I date anyone publicly. Just because you see me with women in public doesn't mean that I have like a public relationship. And I thought that was really interesting. But yeah, it's, you know, you create these fantasies in your head, and it's easy to think you know stuff reading, you know, Us Magazine or whatever. But so Orlando Police Chief John Mina stated that the suspect traveled to Orlando, apparently just to commit this crime, and then had plans to travel back to wherever he came from. According to the police, the bags of the attendees would normally have been checked upon entrance into the venue, but there were no metal detectors at the venue, nor were the attendees patted down. So that totally opens up the option for someone to hide something on their body, you know? One witness complained that the security were more concerned about food and beverages being brought into the theater and not guns or weapons of any kind.
Yeah, that's bullshit. And do you think this killer knew that they were going to focus on other things besides that?
I don't know how he could have known. Once I get into like his mindset, you'll see a little bit more into how this occurred and how this happened. But yeah, I don't think he was able to even see outside of what was going on in his head.
That's crazy. And just to be clear, he killed her. He also killed the brother.
No, the brother's alive still today. Yeah, he's an advocate for gun violence. The brother got into a fight with him. He got away from the brother and died by suicide. So witnesses say that they noticed Kevin and described him as like nervous and kind of creepy. And in a venue full of a few hundred people, multiple witnesses noticing one person, I feel like is pretty telling.
Mm-hmm.
And as a woman, I'm programmed to notice that guy in any bar or any venue. You know, that guy who gives you the creeps. It's a society is really fucked up. But that's a real thing.
Yeah.
If you ask any woman, you know, you're looking out for the guy that gives you the creeps in the bar that could either follow you to your car, put something in your drink, you know. So I understand he must have been putting off real vibes based off of what he had planned. And people took notice. But there's nothing you can do. He wasn't doing anything besides being weird.
Exactly. So it's hard to call at the time.
Yeah. I mean, what are you going to do? Go over to the bouncer and be like, this guy's being weird? What are you going to do?
That's profiling. But yeah.
Right. I mean, some people are just weird. It is what it is.
Yeah.
So investigations showed that Kevin had purchased the guns legally. He did not have an arrest record. He did have previous run-ins with the police. And he didn't appear to know Christina Grimmie personally, nor did she have any idea that he even existed. He also had no diagnosis of any mental illness, but had a history of violence. But this is a place where buckling down on background checks for gun purchasing purposes wouldn't have been effective. You know, he didn't have anything that would have brought it up on a background check to have halted him being able to buy these weapons.
Right.
Now, not to say that I don't think we need stricter gun laws, but my personal feelings, no one's asking for them, but I'm going to put them out there. Keep firearms in society. Do they need to be military grade weapons? Probably not. But my main focus when I talk about this is the law in controlling who, where, and how these weapons are acquired, right? But that's just me. I know no one asked, but I feel like this is a true crime podcast, and there would be a lot less stories like this had this culture started to change and shift in our country. This one particularly is really affecting me based on how young she was. And I think about us at 22 and like how much more we did between then and now. And I don't know, this one really hit me.
Well, it's also throwing me off because, I mean, at the time of her death, I mean, gun issues were already where they were at. So now you're basically telling me it hit concert level. Like it's hitting to the level where it's even affecting these venues where it shouldn't. And I mean, those venues were always protected to begin with. Right. But now we're cutting corners.
Time frame. This is that time frame when we had that shooting in Brussels and then the Ariana Grande shooting. And my husband watches Premier League soccer, and there's been like bomb threats and bombings and multiple times at these arenas where they have to cancel games. I mean, it's so scary to be in an environment with a large amount of people because that threat is always imminent. I mean, working for TSA was kind of trained to be a person looking for explosives.
Right.
And I worked in Kennedy Airport in the JetBlue terminal, and I used to stand up on this platform and look out at the sea of people in the summer that were like stuck in these little glass corrals, waiting on line to get in. And I remember thinking like, this is so dangerous. And these people don't think that way, but they're not escaping those glass corrals if something was to fucking go down. All someone does is have to walk in that door
100%.
and you are right there.
I say the same shit every time I'm in every different airport. I'm like, this is all high level risk if something were to happen. Yeah,
dude. Yeah, it's scary. Even, and especially with all the things that in the last 10 years with the parades and I'm afraid to be in any environment with a large amount of people. Those concerts in Vegas, I mean, all of it is just so, this didn't happen when we were younger.
Agreed. Yeah.
So what changed in the culture and society that all of a sudden
greed people want more money, they're cutting costs, they don't give a fuck.
Oh God.
Or they're overworking their workers too.
I feel like that's a big one.
It goes back to the whole Astro World tour. It's like,
yes.
How did pyrotechnics, how did the technicians not test this before the show to know that the range of that was going to go beyond the fucking stage like that,
Mm-hmm.
So God. We're cutting costs. We're overworking people. Deadly combination.
Especially in America, where we're severely overworked. You have this go, go, go mentality, especially from New York. Like going from New York to Tennessee is like a different world. I can't imagine going from America to any other country in the way that we operate. It's just we're always at 1,000,
Yep. That New York minute, like I can't escape it. I have to remind myself sometimes. I'm like, yes, I'm from New York. I have to wind back a little while everyone else is doing whatever.
It was a life changer for me leaving New York and going to a state like Tennessee where things are real slow. So I digress. The police weren't able to really offer a clear motive for this murder, but it said that Loibel had shown an unhealthy and unrealistic infatuation with Christina Grimmie. And he tried to make himself more physically attractive for her. He did some weight loss, hair plugs, LASIK or eye surgery.
Oh, boy.
So I understand that he wasn't diagnosed with like a specific mental illness by a doctor, but obviously he's suffering from something. Delusions of grandeur.
Yeah.
There's something happening here.
It makes me think of the old... what was his name? John Hinckley, right? It was, the one who was obsessed with, why can't I think of names today? He wanted to assassinate Ronald Reagan because he was obsessed with, I'm going to have to look up this actress. Guys, I'm normally good about this. I'm like recovering from upper respiratory infection, so my brain is not there.
Justin's like the pop culture king, in case you guys haven't noticed already.
I'm dying. Jodie Foster, thank you. Jodie Foster, the world was introduced to Jodie Foster through Taxi Driver.
Yes. Don't even tell this story. Make this a story in an episode.
I will make it a story for sure. But what you just said about making yourself look good, doing all these things, it made me think of it. Yeah.
Delusional. Yeah. I mean, it's nuts. What makes... Okay, whatever. Physically changing your body to be more attractive to a random celebrity is crazy. That's the bottom line. A little bit about him. Kevin was a natural introvert and he gravitated to video games and computers. And they had that in common, but obviously their lives were polar opposites. One of Kevin's only friends was named Corey Denning, and he recalled in an interview that Kevin Loibel's life at home was semi-abusive. He came from a semi-abusive household. During police interviews, Kevin told them that his mother used to beat him with a frying pan and threw dishes at him, and that Kevin's mother also broke Kevin's brother's arm.
Oof.
Yeah. These are all the foundational blocks of violence being something normal in a person's life, I guess.
Right.
Kevin's mother's name was Nora, and she died in their St. Petersburg home in 2010 of an aspirin overdose, which was ruled accidental. I didn't know that you can have an aspirin overdose. I guess it makes sense. That's just something I never thought of.
I feel like I partially knew that. Because aspirin, it technically is a blood thinner too, right? Yeah.
So Denning told the police that Kevin, who was 21 at the time of his mother's death, blamed himself because he encouraged her to kill herself, telling her to go ahead and do it. Yikes. And his mother's death only intensified the turmoil in Kevin's life. Kevin had a father. His name was Paul. And Paul started dating a new woman. And over a 2-year span, the police were called to that home over 6 times about domestic violence fights between the father and the girlfriend. And most of them were involving alcohol. And it was the girlfriend on the father, not the father on the girlfriend. So Kevin often retreated to his bedroom and withdrew into video games and computers. He would cover his windows with aluminum foil and a comforter to block out the light.
Oh, wow.
And sometimes he wore earplugs to avoid the loud noises. That's like an excessive thing to do. Cover your windows in aluminum foil.
That's very extreme.
He must have had some sensory
issues.
Denning, who grew up with Kevin, got him a part-time job at Best Buy. But Kevin was awkward with people. So the managers moved him around to different departments over the 8 years that Kevin worked at Best Buy. And they ended up settling on him working on computers for the Geek Squad to reduce his interactions with customers. So like he was just further and further isolated from people. He attended St. Petersburg College for 3 years, but dropped out in 2010, just months before his mother's passing, after he became obsessed with playing World of Warcraft online. It's a multiplayer fantasy online role-playing game, if people aren't familiar with World of Warcraft.
I feel like to some capacity they got to know about that game by now.
He had never shown any interest in any girls or anyone for that matter until he discovered Christina Grimmie on YouTube. And by April 2016, Corey Denny said he realized that the obsession was unhealthy, and he ended up pulling aside their bosses at Best Buy to express his concerns about the way Kevin was acting, but he wasn't acting out at work, so there was nothing they could really do about it. And it wasn't long after that when Kevin's delusions started down a violent path. In the weeks before Christina's show, he bought that $15 ticket and he purchased the 2 handguns, patiently waiting the 5-day waiting period before he could pick the guns up. And he took them back to the home that he shared with his family. And it said that he lived like a hermit, and his family had no idea he had any plans to go to Orlando. Nor did they know that he had any guns. So
I was going to say, they probably don't even interact with him.
Right.
They have their own domestic issues happening.
They don't even talk.
Yeah, they don't even talk. They just let him live there.
Yep. This kid walks straight into the house and goes in his room. He probably eats in his room. He stays in his room nonstop. It's always fucking dark in there. I mean, it's just like a soup bowl of things created to make him insane. Like whether he had any mental illness to begin with, it was just intensified by his environment, his lack of interaction with other people.
Right. It was all just starting to add up. And I mean, had his remaining family kind of noticed some of this and tried to get him help or gave a shit, if they tried to give him some help, I don't think we would have gotten to the level that we're at now. But again, that's another issue with this country, mental illness and the taboo behind it.
Right. So they didn't even know that he... They never even heard Christina Grimmie's name, they state. Like, they never spoke to him. So if he was so intensely infatuated with her and they've never even heard of her before, it tells you just how much of a relationship they don't have.
Yeah.
Nor would it be able for them to notice that he had mental illness that needed to be addressed and help him. Yeah. So they said they never heard of Grimmie. They never heard him talk about her. And they even watched The Voice all together. Like, they all watched it. They had all watched the show The Voice, but they had never heard her name before. It just seems like a bunch of lying. Yeah.
Something not adding up. 100%.
And before the shooting, coworkers of Kevin had stated he talked about how he was tired and ready to ascend. Yeah.
I'm sorry. He said that to his coworkers. The exact phrase, I'm tired and I want to ascend.
In the article I read, yes.
Yo, if any fucking person is saying to me that they're tired and they want to ascend, I'm not even asking what that means, because in my head, automatically, I'm already like, this is some cult shit. This is potential suicide to a new level. I'm ready to ascend.
Yep.
That's delusion of grandeur right there for you. Like, if I'm telling you I'm ready to ascend out of nowhere.
I mean, it's a very specific sentence.
Very specific.
Yeah. So June 16th, 2016, Christina Grimmie was laid to rest in the Berlin Cemetery in a private ceremony. And the following day, thousands of friends and fans attended a public memorial held in her hometown of Medford, New Jersey. And Grimmie's death led to calls for increased security at performing arts venues and also created a discussion about gun control and mental health in the United States. American heavy metal band Pantera couldn't help noting the similarities between Grimmie's murder and the deaths of former Pantera guitarist Daryl Dimebag Abbott and the 3 others in 2004.
Daryl Dimebag. Yeah. We might cover him at some point too. He's on the list.
I'm going to cover him.
Oh, you are going to cover him? Okay.
Yeah,
because I'm like,
You can take it if you want it, but it's going to be done on this podcast.
It's going to be done one way or another. I'll let you have it. But yeah. Yeah, too many similarities, actually.
Yeah. So they actually urged concert promoters and club owners to impose stronger measures to protect artists from gun-wielding fanatics, adding, sadly, that's not the case, and another rising star had to pay the consequences with her life. Oh, that gave me chills. The murder of Christina Grimmie shocked the world for one day because the shooting at Pulse nightclub occurred the night after her murder, and it was just 4 miles down the road from where she was shot.
Wow.
I was actually in Orlando when the Pulse nightclub murders happened. So that means I was there when she was murdered as well.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot to take in to process. I didn't even think about that because I felt like before her death wasn't highlighted as much.
It was completely overshadowed by this. Yeah. So while police confirmed the 2 shootings had no connection, Billboard published an open letter to Congress. Stop gun violence now, they called it. That was on June 23rd, and they were demanding background checks for every gun purchase and an outright ban on sales to suspected terrorists. The inspiration from the letter came from both shootings, and Billboard's editors said, the ease with which dangerous people can get guns is the one connection between Grimmie's murder and the Pulse shooting. And I'll agree to that. Dangerous people is the operative there, and it's so hard because it's like, there's no right answer. And it's so politically clouded now that
right.
It's hard to see the forest from the trees, you know. In February 2017, Grimmie's family announced their plans to create a foundation in her honor called the Christina Grimmie Foundation. And its purpose is to support those affected by gun violence and or breast cancer. So I guess the relation with her mother being diagnosed, this foundation kind of touches both things. I know that they're a little random to be connected
together, yeah.
But this is not random to this family's life. The foundation frequently hosts events in Grimmie's honor to ensure that her death is not the end of her story. In December 2016, just 6 months after her murder, Grimmie's family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against several entities, including the concert promoter, the foundation that owns the venue she performed in, and the security company working that event. So in January 2017, the promoter and the owner of the venue requested the judge dismiss the lawsuit, claiming Florida law does not allow business owners to be held liable for attacks on their property. I hate you, Florida. The laws in Florida are so fucked up.
Please tell me it did not get overturned. Tell me.
A hearing on the motion to dismiss the lawsuit was set for May of 2017. The lawsuit was dismissed.
Wow.
But Grimmie's family was given an opportunity to refile the suit. The judge stated that the difference defining the club promoter to the venue owner wasn't clear enough in the first suit.
Bullshit.
So on April 9th, on April 9th, 2018, just a year after it was dismissed, Grimmie's family filed a new complaint in a Florida court, and it was revealed that the judge rejected the defendant's motions to dismiss the case and had allowed the family's lawsuit to move forward. So the second request was put through. In their lawsuit, the Grimmie family alleges that the defendants failed to take adequate security measures to ensure the safety of the performers and the attendees at the concert venue. Also, Grimmie's family is also being allowed to move forward on claims of negligent infliction of emotional distress. And the judge determined more research on the claims is needed before moving forward. And according to court records, December 3rd, 2019, the Grimmie family voluntarily dismissed their case. That's it. It's over.
Voluntarily.
I don't know if they ran out of money. Who knows?
They might have, somebody might have tried to settle with them out of court. That's probably why they dismissed it. Yeah, I would hope. Maybe. I would hope. So firearm deaths are a fixture in American life. And there were 1.5 million firearm deaths between 1968 and 2017. That's a higher number than the number of soldiers killed in every United States conflict, Independence War in 1775. That's insane.
That's fucking crazy.
That is insane.
In 2020 alone, more than 45,000 Americans died at the end of a barrel of a gun, whether by homicide or suicide, more than any other year on record. So it's only getting worse, folks.
I'm just literally getting sick to my stomach now.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It makes you feel very helpless. And I'm terrified to send my son to school. I'm terrified to be in places of large mass people. And that's just the way of life now. I hope it changes. There's no reason to recreate the wheel 1,000 times like America likes to do. That is a very sad story of the life of Christina Grimmie.
That is just... it's just really tragic because, again, not only was she so young, but she was so young and she was already so established within her own talent. Like she didn't need the voice. You already have 375 million views. You already have all these followers. You already have this and that. And you managed to sign with Island, which probably would have gave her full creative control as well. So the sky would have been the limit for her, and it just completely ripped away.
Yep. I mean, 2 million followers alone on YouTube is probably garnering up to $100,000 a month in sponsorship.
Exactly. And that was back then. If she survived, I'm sure after the voice, she would have had even more followers. So
100%. Yeah. So this is a rough one.
Another thing, too, is it just destroyed a potential icon for younger women that are into music, because you did mention earlier all of the different talents that come from when YouTube and things first started, but it was all men. It was all men. It was mostly like I know some people will probably listen to this and they'll argue. They'll be like, well, there's Pentatonics and all these other people. But yeah, those are like core groups. Lindsay Sterling, that's like a core group. She's with Pentatonics. I'm just saying, like, Christina Grimmie had the potential to do basically what Justin Bieber and everyone else was doing.
Right. Groundbreaking for women on social media. And she was one of the first. I mean, 2009, when did YouTube even start?
2005, right? Yeah.
And it was like, stupid shit for many years.
Stupid shit and very unfiltered things that we probably should not have been watching. But again,
Yeah. I hope that you lighten this podcast up with your
it'll slightly lighten it up for what it is, guys.
Great.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier we're going to talk about Danny Trejo. I mean, some of y'all already know about him. He's a boss. He is a boss, hands down. He's a fucking boss. He's basically famous Mexican American actor that started his career back in the 80s. But what some people know, other people don't. He spent some time in prison.
I mean, that's not shocking.
It's shocking, but it's not shocking. We're going to discuss how, he went through some rough times and just life in general before he had a chance to turn his life around via Hollywood. So today we're going to switch it up a little bit.
Cool.
Yeah, let's get into it. Let's get into it about my boy. Do I even have to name anything that he's been in? I mean,
you definitely do. There's people that might not know.
All right. So, he was in Desperado. He was in the Spy Kids series. He was in Heat. He was in Machete. For those of you that watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine like myself, the man is Rosa Diaz's father. It doesn't get any more badass than that. She's such a badass character. And of course, that's her dad.
Was he in Breaking Bad?
No, he wasn't in Breaking Bad.
Hold on. What drug show am I thinking of that he was in?
Let's take a look. I don't have my phone. No worries. I got you. I'm looking right now. Trejo, on there. And if he did, I am terribly sorry. I've seen Breaking Bad, like the whole series, twice.
He's so cool.
Oh, From Dusk Till Dawn. In an episode of Boba Fett. Yeah. Oh yeah. He was the Rancor keeper last season. But you've all seen him. He's this very tatted dude. Muscles.
Long hair. He's got like a rough face. IMDb changed their website and it's freaking me out.
Yeah, they even changed the app. I'm like, oh yeah, he was in Con Air as well.
Sons of Anarchy.
Okay. Because I was like,
yep.
Okay, that makes sense.
I love that he's so versatile. Like he does cartoons. He does. Yeah. He's like drug cartel.
He does everything. But what's funny to me is even when he does cartoons, he's still like a badass character. I feel like he's always that dude. So yeah, we're gonna get into a deeper look at his background growing up in East Los Angeles, and what led him into crime.
Breaking Bad. He was.
What? Who did he play?
Hold on.
I can't.
Hold on. I see. I know I saw him in my brain on Breaking Bad. I don't know. It's gonna show me every freaking actor who'd ever been on this show.
I apologize to all. Again, I've seen Breaking Bad like the entire series twice over, and I just didn't process it.
Tortuga.
Oh shit, he was Tortuga. Okay. And then there was the twins. Okay, I know. Okay. I remember now.
Yeah, you got it?
All right. I apologize.
I knew I saw him in there.
Forgive me.
Jesse Plemons. Oh, that's right. Jesse Plemons was in that show. Sorry.
Yeah. Fat Matt Damon.
Yeah. I just remember him from Friday Night Lights, which you can't.
Yeah, I remember from that too. But yeah, Danny Trejo, we're just going to get into some of his background. So he was born in Echo Park, a neighborhood in Los Angeles, California, back in May 16th, 1944. His parents, who were both Mexican American, conceived Danny during an extramarital affair they had with one another when his mother, Dolores, cheated on her husband at the time while he was deployed in the army during World War II.
Oh my goodness.
Let that sink in. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yikes.
His father, Dionisio, was a construction worker who met his mother in 1943 at a dance hall in Highland Park, Los Angeles.
I love that there were dance halls. Why don't they have dance halls anymore?
For what you just said in your previous story, I mean,
guess that's true.
100%. That's, yeah, gun control.
Dance halls sound so nice, like swing dancing with, shoes and spats. Like, I don't know, it just sounds.
Yeah, I'm just picturing like just flipping someone over, doing a little flip, and yeah.
Right, yeah, little skirt sort of scenario.
Not long after he was born, his family decided to flee Los Angeles to live in San Antonio temporarily because his father was wanted by the LAPD for stabbing another man before he decided to turn himself in a year later.
Jesus. So did his mother end up leaving her husband, who was the soldier, to be with the father of her son? Okay, got it.
Yeah.
All right. Run away.
You're right. From a very young age, Danny experienced many challenges in his life at home with his family and the environment that he grew up around in general. So as a child, his father abused him frequently and forbidded him from seeing his mother, along with his half sister, because ultimately left him as well, along with his half sister, because he had injured his arm while under her supervision. So yeah, they both moved to San Antonio. Eventually they got separated. She's doing whatever, but he's not allowed to go see the mother now because his grandmother was really the only person that gave him a sense of comfort when he was staying with his father. And he would often share a room at her home with a few of his cousins. By the time he was 8, he was already introduced to marijuana by his uncle Gilbert and experienced a heroin overdose when his uncle first exposed him to the drug himself.
Hold on a second.
8 years old, folks. 8 years old.
He had a heroin overdose when he was 8 years old?
8 years old.
Oh my God, that's horrible. That's so horrible. An 8-year-old doing heroin is something I never even fathomed.
Even moving aside from the heroin, the fact that he's smoking weed at 8, the only other person I could think of that was like doing drugs that early at that level was Robert Downey Jr., who talks about it very frequently. He's like, my dad let me smoke pot when I was 7. I'm like, what the fuck?
I don't know. I mean, pot is okay. I am more concerned. You can give kids, CBD or THC or whatever for whatever medical cause, reason, fine.
Right.
Smoking pot, right. I'm not condoning children smoking pot, but heroin has no medicinal purposes.
I still don't even know how we got there. One day, he's just sitting there, probably being a kid and probably being bored, and you're like, here, take this. This will straighten you up.
Go away.
Have some heroin.
Right, yeah, leave me alone.
Did you have him inject the heroin himself, or did you do it for him, Uncle Gilbert?
God, Justin, this is not better.
It's gonna get better. I'm sorry.
Oh my God. Okay.
But even before he tried drugs in the first place.
Hold on, I just have to tell you what's happening in my brain. It's just a full-grown Danny Trejo, but small.
In
my head.
He has a grown face and he has like a muscular 8-year-old body.
He's got like a little kid in like a men's, undershirt tank top with the long hair and the tattoos, but he's 8. That's what's happening in my brain.
That's really funny. And he still has like that same deep voice.
Yeah, smoking joints.
Uncle Gilbert, what is this? Hey? Nah, that's a lot. But even before he tried drugs back then in the first place, he had already got an exposure to drugs around his neighborhood and even participated in his first drug deal at the age of 7.
Jesus, Mary and Joseph.
I know Lisa's like, how the fuck is this story supposed to be a better / inspirational? We'll eventually get there. But I need you guys to know, because again, people see Danny Trejo, and yes, you could assume maybe he did some time, or you could assume this, but you see in the level that shit is going. Like,
this explains why his face is as hard as it is. Motherfucker was selling drugs and doing heroin when he was 8 years old.
Yeah, he has a very hard face. He done seen some shit. I mean, he's also older than I always keep thinking of.
Shit.
He done seen some shit. That man's got to be close to 70 now, too. So, like,
Yeah, when I just looked, he was born in 44.
Yeah. Like I said, World War II. Yeah.
Long ass time ago.
Oh, he got arrested for the very first time when he was 10 years old. And it wasn't long before he was incarcerated. I can't.
Holy shit.
The hits keep coming, folks. I swear.
Yeah.
He was arrested for the first time when he was 10. And it wasn't long before after that he was incarcerated for the first time in juvenile facilities just a few years later in 56.
Jesus.
He was like 11 years old.
Yeah.
Luckily, his uncle had already taught him boxing at a young age, which allowed him to be better equipped to fend for himself.
Yo, his uncle needs to go to jail.
You know what's crazy?
Motherfucker.
During research on his story, like I had seen in interviews before, like Danny Trejo would talk about boxing and you know, how that helps him is cathartic. But I didn't know the whole backstory about he was trained at a young age boxing so he could fucking fight in prison as a kid. That's a lot.
Justin, I cannot. Oh my God. I can't even imagine my uncle looking at me and being like, you got to learn to box, 8-year-old, because you're going to spend your life in prison. Being a parent and hearing all these stories that we tell about all these kids, I don't understand. It's really not hard to not raise a kid like that. It's harder to do that than to do it the right way.
My mom taught us at a young age how to fight, and I love you, Mom. I'm just gonna say perhaps it was overkill for a person of my age, but she also wasn't training me to do that, going, you're gonna end up in prison, you gotta defend yourself. She was just
right. She was like, Justin, you're a skinny kid. Let me show you how to defend yourself.
She might have took it to the next level. Again, you guys heard a previous podcast, both my parents are military, so there might have been some excessive force within the training. The training was to teach me excessive force at a very young age, but it was not because I was, she wasn't over here like, you're going to go to prison, or the day comes when you get locked up, I'm going to need you to take out 5 guys at once. It wasn't right. Like
Your
that.
Mom was like, when the war comes to America, you know, show you how to use this knife.
Yeah. So yeah, we're here, but it is cracking me up because,
What's so funny, Justin, is I feel like anyone who knows you knows that that's like the opposite of who you are as an individual.
It is completely the opposite. But again, like you've also seen me at those levels when I'm like getting mad. So it's like, first off, I'm a very mellow person. So if you're getting me all the way to that level, it's like once we cross that line, there's no coming back.
It's a light switch, people. It's a switch.
I become so remorseful because it is against how I am. And it's like, why'd you make me do this? Being. But yeah. So I get the boxing thing, but my man's was over here flat out like, you're going to get arrested and you're going to end up in prison. You got to be ready to fight everybody. Like, it was crazy. Luckily, his Uncle Gilbert was like, here's boxing. So he already knew how to box. It equipped him to be a better fighter to fend for himself while he was in prison. And then he was actually able to win. He was winning competitive boxing championships while in prison.
In prison.
Yes.
I mean, if you're going to go in, they always say like go in and hit the biggest guy so that everyone leaves you alone. If you go in and you're one of the boxers, I mean, they'll leave you alone too. What movie is that where they have
Undisputed?
Yeah.
Yes. My man was in here fighting for his life, and then he was just fighting for fucking, accolades, which is even funnier to me.
And he was probably getting some special treatment.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, I just, again, because of what you said, I'm picturing little man version of Danny Trejo just walking around that juvie, ultra muscular. Every time he walks in a room, everybody gets quiet.
Is he muscular in your head? Because he's scrawny in mine. He's like a scrawny little kid, but he walks around with his elbows out.
He's like scrawny lean. He's like scrawny lean to me, but the head's bobble size, the way I'm picturing it.
This is going to be the rest of the episode. Everything you tell me is going to be this imagery. Perfect. Perfect.
All throughout the 60s now, Danny spent a majority of his time in and out of different correctional facilities within the California prison system in both juvenile and adult facilities in the state. Even meeting young Charles Manson in 1961 when he was serving time at LA County Jail.
All I was thinking when we first started saying this is how different the two lives of those people were. So they had this like shit upbringing and they were in juvie and jail and jail and jail. And they kept going back to prison. And then Charles Manson kills a bunch of people and Danny Trejo becomes a Hollywood star.
It's mind blowing. And again, they did cross paths. I'm grateful they didn't cross longer. For all I know, Danny could have became one of his fucking Manson family. Like
he could have been suckered in. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So they cross paths in prison.
Correct.
Wow.
Yep. They both were in LA County jail together at one point. And by then, I mean, this guy, Danny Trejo, was establishing himself. I'm sure Charles Manson knew him at the time. Like, you're the champion of this fucking prison. You've done all these things.
Right. That's crazy.
But while in prison, though, unfortunately, his drug addiction continued to get worse. And he quickly found himself getting with the prison gangs within those facilities. During his stint on death row in San Quentin State Prison, he found himself either witnessing or even participating in various, death row.
My hands up. He was on death row?
He was, okay. So death row, yes. As you all know, like death row synonymous, meaning like capital punishment. But you could technically be over there within that block and not be sentenced to death row yet, so to speak. So he was within there. He was not sentenced.
That's the worst place to be, huh? You could be like on death row, but not sentenced to die. It sounds horrible.
But on the flip side of that, I mean, maybe that was part of his privilege with boxing. Like maybe over there's I don't want to say chiller area, but notice death row is death row. So it's like those are all isolated cells. You're not dealing with the public the way he would be in other.
Got it.
So
interesting. I love how you just dropped that bomb and looked me straight in the eyes and didn't explain it.
I did. I wanted to see your reaction. I always do that. I always place stuff within here. And then every fucking story, I do it. And then I always look back directly to the camera. Oh, you do every time. And sometimes I'll even put a finger up because I know you're going to react. And like before anyone reacts. Gotta keep them wanting more, right?
Right on my toes, man.
But yeah, his drug addiction got worse, and then he found himself witnessing or even participating in various acts of violence as he became a drug dealer now and a debt collector for the gangs over there. He was their fucking right hand man. Like people didn't deliver on the drugs or the money, and they sent Danny Trejo to walk over there and whoop your ass.
Could you fucking imagine? Could you imagine? Getting Danny Trejo sicked on you because you didn't do what you were supposed to do?
Yeah. You're short on my amphetamines today, boy. You've been short for the past 3 weeks. I just need more time. Just give me more time. I could give it to you. I gave you enough time. You're done talking to me.
You owe me 14 bags of chips.
Yeah, you're done talking to me now. You're going to talk to Danny. Baby Danny Trejo just walks over there, slow walking. He's like, you're going to pay the price today, eh? You're going to pay.
That's not bad. That wasn't bad.
Oh, man. 2 years later, he was in Soledad, which is like another type of prison out there. A prison riot broke out where he hit a guard with a rock, which led him to being placed in solitary confinement, facing a potential death penalty. This turned out to be the defining moment in his life as he was able to find God, as he had said later on, and to make the decision to join a 12-step program for his substance abuse issues during one of his lowest moments in his life. So again, this man, from the moment he was born, was facing the most craziest things. And keep in mind, like, he's still essentially a late teen, practically young adult at this point.
And he's been through so much.
So fucking much.
I mean, he's essentially been addicted to drugs almost his entire life. Being. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the moment when he's like, I got to get better, man. Like, I got to make a change if they don't sentence me to death.
And I find it so sad that this is like at least the third story we've told where people with drug addiction end up in prison and somehow still are able to get their hands on all these drugs. And it just intensifies being institutionalized and having access. It sucks. I don't know how they get it in. It's so corrupt.
Nah, there's always a way, crooked guards, other things.
We've all seen, Orange is the New Black and Shawshank and whatever. Yeah. There's always someone crooked who's going to help them get something.
Exactly. So basically, from what he defined was the lowest moment of his life, and he decided he needed to start working towards better life.
Turning point.
Although that was the beginning of his transition away from a life of crime, I always feel bad at this part too, because that's what happens. Like, whenever you're dealing with substance abuse or depression or anything, or just in general, when people hit rock bottom, sometimes we get to that mental point where we're so defeated, we're just beating ourselves up like, what more can I do with my life? You start wondering, is there even a way for things to get better for me? We hit these fucked up crossroads.
Yeah. And am I even worth trying to make it better?
Exactly. Is there any redemption for me? And usually when you're thinking like that, you're not even asking the question, is there any redemption for me? You're just like, there is no redemption.
Right.
So he's trying to get away from a life of crime now, but Danny never really thought that he was able to do anything positive with his time back then because of his upbringing. You know, it always comes back to that staple of how he was raised. He just thinks he can't break that, the generational curses, if you will. It is what it is.
Prison is cyclical.
Yeah. During the time that he was placed in a juvenile facility, Trejo always felt like becoming a criminal was the only option that he had in his life, because the people around him that he grew up with and who looked like him always seemed to end up in prison.
Yeah.
So it seemed like there was very little hope for him to make something good out of his life outside of the crime. But his luck soon started to change as he was released from prison for the very last time in 1969.
69.
Correct.
It's a long time ago.
Very long time ago. During the 70s, Danny spent most time working different odd jobs here and there, including becoming a gardener, a labor foreman, a salesperson, a partial owner of a lawn care company. Like he was really trying to do shit. He was trying to turn his life around. He even became, and it's funny because like we all know who Danny Trejo is now and his personality, his persona. Like, yes, he's a macho guy. We've seen interviews though between the macho. He's also, as he depicts it, a sensitive guy. And
dude, I could see him like trimming a bonsai tree.
I could totally see him doing that. And clearly he's a go-getter. Like all these things I named, he was doing for himself and setting up a business. So it was all there. The potential. It's almost like he's already been. His whole life has been developed for him to manage himself later on, like when we get to Hollywood aspect.
One of the pictures I just looked at when I looked up his filmography was him holding like a chihuahua, like this tiny little dog, you know, and it's like such a funny, because I think that he portrays all of these characters based on how he looks, and he kind of gets a little typecast, but really he's like a mushy teddy bear.
Yeah.
And he's just had this exterior to fight off the world for his whole life because it's been so fucked up. But it's like, I just want to pet kittens.
Exactly. He's just trying to live his best life. Yep. After the lawn care company, he had even became a substance abuse counselor at one point in time to be able to help others who were in a similar situation as he was before he was released from prison.
Love that.
And, he shared his experiences with them to help move them past their addiction.
There's no one better to help someone in that scenario than someone who's been there.
Exactly. So while working at Western Pacific MedCorp, he decided to sign with an agent so that he would be able to find some work as an extra in movies to make a little extra money on the side. Little did he know, folks, that this would be the start of his career in show business way back then. So he was able to get his first big break in the movie industry when he was asked to meet with one of his teenage patients who was having issues managing his cocaine addiction on the set of the movie Runaway Train in 1985. Folks, Runaway Train, if you've never seen it, highly recommend it. It is Jon Voight. It is young Eric Roberts. This was like Eric Roberts' first film, and he got a fucking Oscar nomination for it, as well as Jon Voight. It's about two escaped convicts get on a train. No one is on this fucking train except one random train ticket holder. And then they realize that the train has no conductor and it has no brakes. It's straight up just running away. And they're trying to find a way to stop it or get off of it. Very good film.
Do we know who the patient was?
No.
Okay. I'm sure it's
Yeah. And I'm assuming the teenage patient himself was just an extra as well.
Okay.
While he was there, he was actually noticed by one of the screenplay writers, Edward Bunker, who coincidentally served time with him at San Quentin and remembered him from his days as a fucking boxer in prison. Folks,
the world is very small.
Folks, I just need you to really just take in that cataclysmic moment. Like, I just finished telling you that one of these motherfuckers is a screenplay writer for what was one of the top films in the 80s. And then you have Danny Trejo. I just want you to take in a moment of when they first met on the set. And it's like, hey, Danny, And he's probably like, Ed Wood, what? Like, and then they have to do, how do you know one another? And he's like, we were in prison
together.
We did time in San Quentin together. You know, Danny was fucking top boxing champ and / you know, right hand man to get the money back and bookkeeper, like all these random fucking things. Like I would just be sitting on the set, like, what?
The fated scenario to be set up, right? I mean, some things are just destiny, right? So what is the chance that these two people are going to meet again in a completely different environment?
Right? It's zero to none. So it's fate. It's like fate was grooming this man.
Yep.
But yeah,
I wonder what that guy was in prison for, the screenwriter.
We're gonna have to look that up at some point because now I'm curious. And I mean, I wonder what you were in prison for, and how soon did you bounce back, and how did you get the job as screenplay writer for the script? He
was an informant for the convicts side.
Yes. For those who's always listening to our podcast, I mean, outside of the podcast, I always say this in general. People are always comparing where they're at in life to where other people were at their age. And I'm always like, everybody, the right path is my own path. Everybody has a different path. You'll do things when you want to do. I hope some of these podcasts are now fucking inspiring you, because literally you could have went to prison and then been a screenplay writer. You could have been a script writer for this fucking film. So
how old was he at that time? Do we know?
At that time, it was 85 and he was born at 44. So
44. Yeah. So he was in his 40s.
Yeah, he was an old dude, late.
Yeah, I mean, he's a grown-ass man to be discovered. You never do know what happens.
That's crazy. So that happened, and they briefly reminisced about his days as boxing in prison. Right then and there, he was offered a job as an extra in the prison scenes for the film, making his movie debut at the age of 40. and was also asked to become a boxing trainer for one of the lead actors, Eric Roberts.
Wow.
So yeah, because I don't want to spoil the film. I want you all to see the film, but obviously the train isn't necessarily what it seems, and there might be more people on there. So now these escaped prisoners, these two need to fend and fight to survive, and bam. So, and you're going to recognize Danny Trejo, because again, it's not like we can say Danny Trejo. The motherfucker was 40. He already was what he already
looked like himself. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're going to see him in quite a few scenes within the movie. And yes, he did help train Eric Roberts in boxing. And
I feel like he came out of the womb looking like himself. You know, he came out with long hair and like a tank top and jeans on. Imagine.
So from there,
sorry.
No, you're good.
I'm getting lost in the weeds.
No, I want you to get lost. Like I said, this story was definitely, I knew where it was going. And I intentionally, the way I wrote this, I'm like, this is going to be one of my shorter stories, because the reactions and everything, we're going to be going in. I was anticipating that. But yeah, so he started training Eric Roberts in boxing, and then he was featured in a lot of scenes. From there, he was able to land similar types of roles as a prisoner over the next few years, which helped bring him more recognition and clients as a drug counselor, which he was still, he still continued to do to help others for some time. Even after his acting career started to take off, he was still doing this.
Oh, cool.
So seriously, like I respect that so much, that you're so down to earth. Like, Hollywood didn't change you, and you were still going back to like the community which you came, or just in general with substance abuse, things like that, and you're helping people.
It's the most important work. The stuff that he's doing in Hollywood will continue to live, but this stuff changes people's lives. And being an advocate for me, like I'm a breast cancer survivor. Many people don't know that about me. Only close people do, I guess. But for me, like I try to go out into the world and like speak to women who are battling that kind of a thing. And it's so needed and necessary to advocate. And that's exactly what he's doing. He's taking all of his life experiences and turning it on its head. And it's incredible. I find that very inspirational. Like, no matter how much money he had, it was important enough that he did this drug counseling and tried to help these people, because somebody did that for him.
Exactly. It's just wild. By the time the 90s came around, You know, Danny Trejo had already appeared in over a dozen movies, and he started to make appearances on TV as well, working
and he's in his 50s.
and he's in his 50s, working together with other famous actors in different films, such as, like I said, Jon Voight, because they did another couple films together. He's ended up in films with Robert De Niro and Val Kilmer. He was able to perfect his craft and establish himself as a respected actor during the decade. And folks, again, like, oh man, time traveling, getting all nostalgic. You know, the 90s, the late 80s, 90s, they gave us a unique group of men for action, if you will. I'm not referring right away. People are going to be like, oh yeah, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Stallone, Willis. No, I'm not talking about them guys. I'm talking about the Danny Trejos. I'm talking about the Michael Madsens. Like, we had a very unique, while you had what you consider the top echelon action actors, Willis, Stallone, Schwarzenegger, we still had Carl Weathers. We still had Danny Trejo. We still had Michael Madsen. Like, we Mickey Rourke probably would have fell within there.
Definitely. We
had this unique thing going where not only did you have just top action actors, but you had like character action actors. So it was weird as fuck. Like, it was weird and cool.
Well, I think Mickey Rourke is a perfect example of that. Like, he's always typecast in a certain way.
Yeah. It was pretty cool to have like a subcategory within the actual action category. But so Danny Trejo was doing his thing. Mind you, he was the only one doing that shit at 50 years old.
Right.
But yeah, after many years of appearing in supporting roles throughout his career, you know, he was able to land his first leading role as the main character in the Machete series. He has now been sober for over 50 years, and he continues to build an illustrious career to this day, people.
Awesome.
So despite his gradual rise to fame, he continued to assist others who were in need of his help, even though he had stopped becoming a drug counselor many years ago. While filming on the set of Blood In, Blood Out in San Quentin, he met a prisoner by the name of Mario Castillo, who was struggling with a drug addiction, similar to how he had before, and helped him overcome his issues. They continued to stay close even after he was released from prison, now speak at different recovery centers and juvenile facilities around.
Can I just show you this picture?
Yeah.
Look at this. Look at that fluffy little dog on his lap, sitting in like a lowrider. And he's got this fluffy little white poodle in his lap, and he's looking like such a badass. He's got no shirt on. All his tattoos are out. And this dog is just poofy in his lap. It's exactly how I picture him.
He's badass. He's like, I can have any dog I want.
He's like, I'm so tough. His dog's name is Zelda. And he's like, I'm so tough. I'm totally comfortable with the fact that I have a fucking poodle.
Oh, in 2019, I was going to say Danny saved a 5-year-old child who was trapped in a vehicle that he had just seen in a car crash and helped bring them to safety. Wow. I don't know if anyone remembered that. It's safe to say that he was successfully able to turn his life around from what it was in his younger days, while being able to help others in need throughout the process. And, you know, my final thoughts on that, you know, they say that we shouldn't judge a book by its cover. Mm-hmm. And this is especially true for those who are seeking a second chance in their lives. Although they may have done bad things in the past, they're not always going to want to continue that type of behavior in the future, and may even be actively seeking positive changes in their life. Just because they are perceived a certain way by others because of their looks or past actions doesn't mean that it's any indication of who they are as a person today, even entertainers. This is why it's always important to understand the full story behind each of these individuals instead of just what it may seem to be on the surface level. And with that said, folks, I'm sure some of you are like, well, you guys covered Mel Gibson. You guys covered these people. You were being harsher to them. You're damn right we were being harsher to them, because the difference between Mel Gibson and all these other assholes versus Danny Trejo is Danny Trejo from day one.
Redeemable qualities.
He has redeemable qualities, but he has always, the key factor here is this motherfucker has always owned the faults that he made, that he had. He never was out here in interviews talking about, I didn't do these things or it's other people's fault. He didn't even necessarily blame his family for his upbringing. Like, that's stuff that came out later, not necessarily by him. Danny Trejo has always owned up to what he did, and he has taken responsibility, and he has actively gone out there to help and mentor others. I haven't seen Mel Gibson and half these other fucks do anything.
Anything.
So, you know, they get to make career comebacks, after dozens of times of being assholes and other incidences, and Hollywood's forgiving them right now, and that's good and great and all, but in my mind, my opinion, these still aren't great fucking people. They're not good people outside of Hollywood.
Well, that's the difference, right? That even goes back to what I was talking about in the beginning of the episode about how you think these celebrities. And really, the core of it is that if you look at Mel Gibson and you look at Danny Trejo, you can have some immediate first impressions, right? And they're wrong. They're the opposite, really, in reality, just based on the story that we told on this podcast. Danny Trejo took everything and he's an advocate for people. And Mel Gibson is like a racist shithead.
Exactly.
And if you look at them on their face, Danny looks like he's tatted up and he's been to prison. And Mel Gibson looks like he could be a businessman on Wall Street.
Yep.
Exactly what you said is that book. You can't judge a book by its cover. You cannot judge these people by the way that they look. Judge them by their actions. And you're right. And you're super big about these celebrities taking accountability for their actions. That's always been something that you've been really, really poignant about on this podcast. And I appreciate that because it's exactly the opposite in their real lives. They don't take accountability.
Yeah.
And nothing happens. They're like in this glass box of untouchability and they just continue on with all of their fucking money. And one of the people that really like triggers me is Tom Cruise and all this stuff. And maybe we should do him in an episode. I feel like that would be a long fucking episode. But yeah, it's that same persona, right? He seems like this like handsome action movie star. And then really under the fucking surface, he's like in a cult and he's evil
and he's arrogant asshole.
Things.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like I like his stunt work. I like his action work, but I have voiced that many a time on other people's podcasts, my old podcast, things like that. Yeah, he's one of those people that falls into that category. But again, Danny Trejo. And that's the thing, folks. Like we cover a lot of topics with a lot of people. Like I said, this episode was going to be a little bit different because yes, Danny Trejo might have committed crimes in the past, but that man put that behind him. Yeah, he had the ultimate turnaround. It was a nice redemption story. He has paid his dues for his crime, and he is continuing to pay them forward and help people. And I respect that.
I love that. We need to do a few more stories that have this kind of a vibe rather than ending on the same way that my story ended, which made us all want to throw up. Sorry, everyone. Glad we did Justin's second. Leave on a high.
Leave on a high note right there.
And just go Google some pictures of Danny Trejo because they're fucking hilarious, man. He is such a badass and he's always like petting a kitten or a poofy little dog. And it's perfect. Perfect. And I didn't know all that about him. So that I love finding out that he's so soft. I really didn't know. Like you look at him and you're like, this dude's been.
He looks like a hard edge person. Yeah. It's all in his face.
Yeah.
It's all yeah.
And he probably gives like the best hugs. He's like one of those guys.
When you look back at the history of the creative arts, it takes a lot of darkness to create the light the arts bring to the world.
Thanks for joining us this week. And if you enjoyed our conversation, please subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and go over to Apple Podcasts to rate and review.
Please check out our sources listed in the episode notes. They're amazing.
And you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Crime of the Arts Podcast.
We're looking forward to having you back next week. Until next time, peace out, everybody.
Peace out, everybody.